Joining us here on the show is our good friend, NFL insider, senior writer, head of massive, masterful NFL content for CBS Sports and CBSSports.com, our good friend, Will Brinson. Will, good morning and Happy New Year.
DA, what's up, buddy? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. We've had a rash of announcements today of firings and hirings. What was more surprising to you? Marvin Lewis got fired or Mike Mayock is the new GM of the Raiders?
Well, that's a really good question. I would say that it's more surprising that Mike Mayock would be the GM of the Raiders because, you know, Mike Mayock is a media guy, and seeing him jump from NFL Network to the Oakland Raiders to be a GM is certainly a surprising move. But I've long said that that cockroaches and robots would rule the world in a post-nuclear apocalyptic scenario before Marvin Lewis is fired. So I would say that Marvin being done in Cincinnati might be the most surprising thing. You know, it seems as if I think really the surprising thing about Marvin is that he's not even going to stick around in some front office role. He's just out of there completely, and you know, may end up being on who knows, TV, maybe in a front office somewhere, may end up coaching again for all we know.
Well, with all of these openings, I kind of feel like Marvin Lewis is a very hot commodity, or at least a lukewarm commodity. With 8 potential head coaching openings, I would think Marvin Lewis would coach again in the NFL if he wanted to, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, like, people don't realize this, and I tweeted this out, and some people, they're like, oh, you didn't win any playoff games. But, despite the lack of playoff wins, and despite, the lack of postseason success for Marvin Lewis, and you know this, I mean, people need to understand, before Marvin Lewis got to Cincinnati, the Bengals were the pre-Browns Browns. I mean, the Bengals were the laughingstock of the NFL for a decade. They didn't have a season above 500 from 1991 through 2004, I believe. Marvin came in, after Sam Weish, Dick LeBeau failed there, and Marvin came in and really built this team into a respectable club, a team that made the playoffs frequently, that dethroned the Steelers and the Ravens in the tough AFC North. And they didn't win the playoff games. They lost him in horrific fashion, but he did have some bad luck with injuries and all of that. So to me, yeah, I think that a team that needs defensive help and needs some stability and, it would be interested in trying to create a better floor for itself while, potentially limiting its ceiling, would at least have to consider Marvin Lewis. The playoff record, though, I mean, it really is just brutal.
Yeah, it's hard to get past 0-7 in the postseason over 16 years. But as you mentioned, this is the least satisfying renaissance of any team ever. Basically, the Bengals went 0 for the 90s in the early 2000s, and now they've been a playoff contender for 15 straight years, but just nothing to show for it. Will Brinson joins us here on the DA Show on Black Monday. I saw you gloss Mike Mayock as a pretty decent hire, but you're just surprised that he would decide to work under John Gruden. That's what you're most surprised about with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Mayock, I mean, some Raiders fans trying to tell me, it's like, Mike Mayock would never take a job where he didn't have the final say. Let me explain something to you, Raiders fans, how this thing called money works. When one guy at your company is getting a 10-year, $100 million contract, everyone else at the company works for that guy. So Mike Mayock might think that he can come in there and have final say, or that he'll have creative input or whatever it is that he would want. I mean, at the end of the day, John Gruden is going to pull the trigger, and I mean, I would anticipate that those guys have had that conversation that Mayock gets to be the GM, because it's a hard bridge, man, to make that leap from media member to GM. Our own Pete Prisco has been out there screaming this morning about how he should be a GM and how, where's my interview? How come nobody's talking to me? It would be great. Take them off our hands, some Jaguars or something like that. I mean, I think the thing with Mayock, you just can't expect that at the end of the day, when the clock is on and the Raiders are making a pick, that it's going to be Mayock's call to make. I think he's going to be able to give Gruden tons of input in the scouting process, and he'll be the GM. But if you believe that anybody other than John Gruden is pulling the strings for the Raiders, you're crazy. The whole the quotes that he gives out, like Gruden is, I promise you, DA, Gruden is going to act like he works for Mike Mayock. He's like, I'm really excited that Mark hired him, and I can't wait to work with him in a collaborative effort, and I'm sure he'll be a great guy to work for and all that. That ain't how it works. Gruden is in charge there, and all these little quotes that he props out there in the media are very much falsehoods.
I'll tell you what, with these 8 openings now, including Denver as well, Vance Joseph, Mike McCarthy's going to have his choice of the litter, right? I mean, he's got to be right now the number 1 coaching candidate. Would you say that?
We talk about Marvin Lewis getting a job. I think 2 of the guys who've been fired, Mike McCarthy, I would actually take Adam Gase over Mike McCarthy. I think Gase,
really?
I understand he doesn't have a Super Bowl like McCarthy, but he's more innovative offensively, younger, and he made a lot of chicken salad with some less than appealing meal options in Miami. That was a bad Miami team, and took him to 10 wins with Matt Moore. He got him to 6 wins with Jay Cutler, who literally had retired, and got him to 7 wins with a lot of Brock Osweiler. So I think if you gave him like Baker Mayfield, that'd be pretty enticing. And there's some chatter out there that Peyton Manning, who worked with Adam Gase in Denver, could potentially try and get him to Cleveland. Could also be interested in going to Denver as well. Given his connections with John Elway. But yeah, Mike McCarthy certainly, if he wants to coach next year, has the option to do so. I mean, somebody would give him a job, and I think it's pretty similar. We'll see how the if it plays out, how the similarities will continue to match up. But I do think it's similar to Andy Reid. I mean, Andy Reid had great success early on in Philadelphia, almost won a Super Bowl in his 2nd or 3rd year. Mike McCarthy, same sort of thing, made some runs later, didn't work out. Both guys actually had a tragedy close to them. Andy Reid lost his son. Mike McCarthy lost his brother at the end of their tenures. It just didn't work out. It got stale. The team decided to move on, and you could see Mike McCarthy land somewhere and have a lot of success and be really rejuvenated at the idea of taking over another job. It wouldn't be surprising at all.
Do you feel like the Bears screwed themselves by knocking the Vikings out of the playoffs and setting themselves up for a Eagles game?
I think that they probably gave themselves a tougher opponent. I would rather play Minnesota, I think, than Philadelphia. But, I mean, I understand how this goes both ways. If the Bears lay down and let the Vikings beat them, it's basically them telling the Vikings, we want to play you next week. And, giving a team with that kind of roster and, a quarterback who's been successful but just can't win the big game, it's another story for it. Giving them that kind of motivation is dangerous. And I understand the Bears are just 4.5-point favorites against the Eagles. I do think that as much as we get caught up in the Nick Foles is about to make a run again. Nick Foles, magic voodoo playoff guy. This is not the same Eagles team that they had last year. They don't have the power run game. They don't have as many weapons. And they don't have the coaching staff in place that they had last year. So I think the Bears are going to take care of business against the Eagles. But, yeah, I mean, I think they probably gave themselves a tougher opponent just because of how hot Philadelphia's been down the stretch.
Will Brinson joins us from CBS Sports and CBSSports.com. Why do you think Tom Coughlin said what he said yesterday when he said it about Leonard Fournette and T.J. Yeldon?
I think he is planning to get rid of him. I mean, the report last night via the AP, I believe, is that they voided Leonard Fournette's guarantees in his contract. And if that's the case, it is hard to imagine that Leonard Fournette will be on the Jaguars moving forward. Yeah, I mean, like you don't void a guy's guarantees if you're planning on keeping him and playing him. I mean, maybe they just want some flexibility on the cap space. I wouldn't blame him at all. I mean, he's a top 10 paid running back because of the rookie salary, and they're in a big cap trouble. I think that they are going to make some harsh decisions this offseason. What are they going to do with Blake Bortles' salary? They're going to try and spread it out. Are they going to keep Malik Jackson, Calais Campbell? Do they extend Yannick Ngakoue, Miles Jack, Jalen Ramsey? I mean, there's a lot of stuff to be done in Jacksonville. As bad as they were this year and as dumb as giving Blake Bortles a deal was, I do understand, though, why you would keep Doug Marrone and why you would keep Dave Caldwell under Tom Coughlin. This is a team that is going to have a lot of hard decisions to make, and continuity could be important.
That's wild. I mean, 2 years after taking Leonard Fournette, number 4 overall, you would submarine.
Dude, they could have had Deshaun Watson.
Right, exactly. Or Patrick Mahomes. So they would submarine his value on the trade market just because they're mad at him? I mean, that doesn't seem like smart business, does it?
Well, no, I think it helps his value on the trade market because and I have to dig into this, but I don't know that his contract is tradable at its full salary because you're basically asking somebody, like, would you want to give up a 7th-round pick for the right to have running back who was drafted in the first round with a top 10 salary that is, guaranteed for another 2 years? Like he's not an asset at this point. If he can't stay healthy, he can't be productive, and his salary's huge. I mean, it is a nightmare in terms of what the Jaguars got themselves into with Fournette and Blake Bortles over the last 24 months.
Will Brinson joins us on a Black Monday. Was there any coach that got fired this year, before I let you go, any coach that got fired that you thought was undeserving, that should have kept his job?
Well, I mean, Hugh Jackson, no. Mike McCarthy, I think that they just needed to move on. Steve Wilkes, that was not a great effort from them. Marvin Lewis, it was time there too.
Gase, Cutter.
I would say Gase is probably the guy. I mean, I know he's 23 and 25 in 3 years in Miami. But look, I mean, Todd Bowles kind of the same way. I mean, people need to stop taking jobs in the AFC East. Just stop doing it until Bill Belichick and Tom Brady are gone. Gase is now the 18th coach to be fired or resigned since Belichick took over in New England. The Dolphins hire and the Jets hire, whoever hires the next coach will be the 25th coach hired in that span. I mean, we're counting like interims and all this stuff. I mean, it's just insane how many people have come and gone in the AFC East. Rex Ryan's looking to get that punch card, maybe get a free sub if he gets the Dolphins job. And I mean, I think that Gase and Bowles are guys. I think Bowles could end up going back to Arizona and being a coach. He was a defensive coordinator there under Bruce Arians. Could be interesting in that spot. I mean, I just think those two guys did pretty good work with pretty bad rosters in a division where, you're probably staring down 2 losses a year to the Patriots, and the only way you can make the playoffs is via the wild card because New England wins the division every time. It's just a tough spot to be in.
Will Brinson joins us. Check him out on Twitter for the latest on today's Black Monday across the NFL at Will Brinson. Also, check out all of his stuff on the NFL and the recap and the preview of the wild card weekend at CBSSports.com. Always love talking to you, buddy. Thanks so much. Thanks for all of your help here on the show in 2018. Let's go and do it again in 2019. Happy New Year to you and the fam.
Absolutely, man. And tell people New Year's resolution, subscribe to the Pick Six podcast, daily NFL show in your inbox every morning by 8 a.m. We'll have a full recap of Black Monday up tomorrow morning to kick off the new year.
It is well worth it. The Pick Six podcast is part of CBS and CBS Sports Digital. Really good stuff. Thanks, Will.